If you're built to pull sumo, generally speaking, you have a good build to squat. Because the people who are generally built to sumo have short femurs and short legs proportionally. When you have short femurs or short legs, you tend to be quite quad dominant and naturally a little bit weak in the posterior chain. Now, when we set up sumo, the only advantage that sumo gives us is that we can get the hip bone closer to the bar. So rather than conventional with the hip sitting way back here, we go with a wider stance, we open the knees more laterally, the hip bone moves forward in space and becomes closer to the bar. So the lever length on the hip relative to the bar is going to be shorter. So the hip extension demands of the exercise are going to be less. If you're a short femored individual, you've also got that longer torso. If we manage to get that hip bone closer to the bar, the torso is also going to be in a more upright position, which for someone who has a long torso, which is difficult to stabilize, getting that torso more vertical, putting less shear stress on the spine and making the bracing demands of the lift less demanding is going to make life considerably easier for them. If we want to pull sumo correctly, we're going to need hip sockets that can face reasonably outwards, because if we can't get into a reasonably externally rotated position, we can't get into a good sumo position. So if you're an individual that has very forward facing hip socket, so for example you find that you need to squat with your toes facing almost straight forward or just very slightly out and a reasonably narrow stance, because you find that if you go wider your knees get jammed in and you can't rotate and open up, you're going to be someone who's really going to struggle to pull sumo because you haven't got the space in your hip to get your femur rotated out wide enough to get into a good position. So the next part of the deadlift setup that we want to look at now is setting your grip or your grip width. So obviously again, this is going to be dependent on whether you're pulling conventional or sumo. Obviously with a conventional stance, the hands are going to go outside the legs. With the sumo stance, the hands are going to go inside the legs. So the main problem that we run in with conventional is people trying to put their grip too narrow, and then they end up basically impeding their setup because the arms are getting stuck on the legs, or sometimes they'll go wider than is optimal, and then basically it means that they are increasing the range of motion unnecessarily. So what we're going to have Naomi do now is set up in her conventional stance. What she's going to do is put her grip too narrow. So right now she can't retract her shoulder blades and get these set down and back the way that she wants to, because her forearms are being physically blocked by her knees and her thighs. So that's meaning that she has to start in this rounded position. What that also does for some people then is it means that they end up starting with the bar away from their shin, because they can't even roll the bar right against their shin because the arm ends up hitting their leg before they get to that point. So that's a really common thing we see there. So what we want is just very slight contact between the forearm and the leg. So they should be in contact but not impeded by the leg when we go to set up. So if Naomi just puts her grip out a little bit wider now, so what we can see now is she's in a better position through her upper back here. The bar is against the shin. We've still got contact here between the leg and the forearm. So we haven't gone wider than is necessary. We've just got a little bit of contact, but not enough to inhibit the setup that she's going to go through. So that would be what's optimal for the vast majority of people here with conventional. Now, if she sets up with a wide grip, so say go out an inch each side, the problem that we run into here is now in vertical space, her arms now are shorter because she's widened her grip. So that means she's going to have to reach down further to the bar to set up. So basically we've just added to the range of motion and made the lift more difficult. You can relax. It's going to be harder for her to maintain a good upper back position. Think about, say, a snatch grip deadlift. The hardest thing about it is being able to maintain that upper back position, because the wider we go, the harder it is to stay in that neutral or retracted position. So not only have we added range of motion to the lift, we've also made it more taxing on the upper back. Just like we've seen in the other lifts, the deadlift is going to have two distinct phases to it. The initial phase off the floor, let's just call it phase one, is primarily driven by the quads, and the only joint that really moves here is the knee. So we're going to see knee extension and a drive through the quads to get the bar moving off the floor. And what's going to happen is the torso angle relative to the floor is pretty much going to stay the same until we get to just below the knee, depending on the proportion of the lifter. So during this phase, the hips and the shoulders should rise together, And at the end of it, what we should do is end up in a position that looks suspiciously like the end position of a Romanian deadlift. That's if we've done everything well. Now, once we get to that point, the quads have pretty much done all the work that they can do, because once we get to the end of the phase one, the shin angle is now going to be vertical, which is great because now the bar can move directly up in space so that we can have a vertical bar path. But because the shin is vertical, it means that the quads no longer have any leverage to contribute to the lifting of the bar. And that's why it's phase two of the lift now, where the posterior chain is the prime mover, because now is where we start to see the hip extension and we start to see that torso angle change and the torso become more upright relative to the floor. So we've got a distinct quad dominant phase between the floor and the kind of mid shin or below knee or below the kneecap, and then we've got a posterior chain dominant part of the lift then as we go up from that point. Now in the initial part of the lift, the posterior chain is still playing a role, but it's primarily isometric in that it's going to be responsible for holding that torso angle and that spinal alignment in place whilst we go through that knee extension to get the bar to the end of phase one.